Hello, everybody. What's up on this WrestleMania week as it is now? Joined, I've got to say, really happy to have him back on the show. We was just looking off air at when it actually last was, and it's gone both slow and quick. Is the outcome of that in our lives, Max? But great to have you back on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome in here Max Green, coming back to us again, talking. This time a little bit more wrestling themed. We're in the midst of arguably the biggest wrestling event of the calendar year as it is. Even in these crazy times, Max, we still, as wrestling fans, we still have a celebration of wrestling going on. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and he's kind of grown out of wrestling a little bit, but he always comes back to watch WrestleMania. He's like the casual fan. And, he was saying to me, he was like, well, what day is it on? I was like, well, it's 2 days. Not only is it 2 days, I mean, it's gone from a whole day of WrestleMania to a whole weekend. Now we've got a week, it seems, of wrestling with NXT takeovers included. It's almost like you've got to book off 8 days like public holiday. Vince McMahon is expecting everybody to just sit at home and watch wrestling non-stop. I'm sure like 20 years from now, it'll probably be like WrestleMania month or something, and we'll all just be glued into it and wired in. But how are you, my friend, and on this busy week for WrestleMania?
I mean, yeah, very much looking forward to it. I would say it's actually been one of the most sort of unpredictable manias for the last sort of couple of years. I mean, normally by Royal Rumble time, we sort of know what direction it's going. I have to say, I guessed the winner this year, which is always sort of a target of mine. But obviously, then Brian coming in for the main event as well. We could be getting a repeat of WrestleMania 30. We might not be. So it's took a slightly different path in that respect. The same with the Universal Championship. If you just said to me before Royal Rumble that Bobby Lashley was going to be heading into WrestleMania as the Universal Champion, I wouldn't have believed that. So both World Championships, I think, have took a slightly different path to where I thought they were going to be, and obviously things that I have enjoyed over wrestling, things like the Hurt Business, is now, I think, it was probably one of the best things sort of going, has now been broken up, disestablished. So it's a very interesting Mania card, and for me, I think being an Undertaker fan, this is probably the first year where I've just said, actually, no, he's not going to be here this year, as all the other years have just been. I mean, even the year that I went to Mania, which was 35, and ironically, he didn't turn up. I was luckily enough to be there the next night for Raw, and see him. So I sort of caught the dead man gimmick, the before he retired and left his boots in the ring, sort of thing. So but this year it is going to be sort of, I think, odd, and I think the last two Manias, because of the pandemic, we've been able to see these sort of legends step away a bit more, and let the younger talent sort of perform and fill the void. I know we had Cena last year in the Bray Wyatt match. Goldberg was still sort of hanging about, but this year there's not really any sort of legend, part-timer, so to speak, on the card. So it's going to be interesting, really is.
Absolutely, and you're right. The road to WrestleMania, like on my weekly show, Powered for SP3, we always talk about this, and it's been very interweaving with everything. It's not really been a set thing from start to finish, and things have just been much more spontaneous this year. And you hit the nail on the head with the whole Daniel Bryan thing from WrestleMania 30. It does seem like a little bit of a repeat, and even from a year later after 30 at Fastlane, when Roman and Daniel Bryan had that match as well. And again, we saw a repeat of that this year. So there's a lot of similarities. It's almost like, I feel like there's so much WWE that they've kind of run out of matches, because there's quite a few of those on this WrestleMania card that I've seen throughout the years. Another one of them would be, of course, Bray Wyatt, of course, the Fiend now with Randy Orton. And I can't remember what WrestleMania that was, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't that long ago.
33.
There you go, mate.
33. Yeah.
I knew you were here for a reason, my friend. With your statistics, will be way better than mine. But yeah, I mean, you're spot on. And that match, I got to be honest with you, I didn't enjoy that one they had. It was the one where they used the special effects, and you had the thing going on the ring, and Randy Orton like being baffled out for some reason, even though he couldn't probably see it as much as we could on the screen. Which made no sense at all. But I think this one could be really out there if they go the whole Funhouse sort of Funhouse style from last year, which I got a feeling there will be a bit of a mix. But again, those two have had a lot of run-ins, and yeah, there's a lot of matches like that now. I kind of feel like, I don't know what you feel about it, Max, but that specialty about having a match that we've never seen before. There's not many left of guys that you would consider over that you can make that magical match with. There aren't a lot left that we haven't already seen that spring to my mind. So this is where we're at. Let me ask you, Max, have you been a Roman fan? Were you a Roman fan ever? And what do you make of his? Of course, last year he came back. He turned heel, which is what a lot of fans were crying out for. What I always said, funny enough, is that, like, because everyone was saying Roman's got to turn heel, that's the only way he's going to make it, blah blah blah, they all boo him, whatever else. But I was kind of thinking to myself, the day they do turn him heel, the fans will start liking him because it will be more edgy, so it kind of defeats its own purpose. If they really wanted to keep him proper heel, they have him keep coming out as he was, and just doing all the same things, smiling, catering up to the fans. I reckon that would have wound them up more than what we see now. So it's kind of odd how things change like that. I saw it with The Rock. You'll remember how that sort of edginess come out of him. But it's done Roman a lot of good, I think, in terms of his promos and stuff like that. It's a lot more comfortable when I watch him speak. But were you ever a fan of Roman? Have you been a fan of Roman, or do you prefer this one or the one we had before?
It's a good question. I think with Roman, he was sort of put into a position, I think, at WWE where he perhaps wasn't ready for, and plus you still had the sort of part-time legends still sort of hanging about. So it's I think it's very hard to sort of give him the transition at that point. And I don't think that was Roman's fault. I think Roman is brilliant and great. I think it didn't help by keeping some of the Shield sort of attributes that they still gave to him. You know, like the music, the vest. It was like, okay, we're past that, Roman. Let's this is you now.
Yeah.
And they sort of still kept him in that sort of pigeonhole. Yeah, that's his music, that's his gimmick. In terms of where he is now, I think the Paul Heyman align was really good. I wish they'd done it sooner, and what I mean by that is I always liked the story of Paul Heyman sort of turning on Brock Lesnar and aligning himself with this sort of younger person, because the whole Paul Heyman character is, for me, he's rode the coattails of Brock Lesnar for years, and the whole storytelling of it would have been, you know, Brock's not getting any younger, his schedule is getting less and less, and I've got someone here like Roman Reigns who is determined and driven and wants to beat him, and I can help him do that. And I liked the idea of maybe them doing it like that. I like the align. I think it's worked out best for him. I think it was quite risky from WWE perspective, you know, especially going up against AEW at the moment. They've not really got, I suppose, a face of the company, so to speak. I mean, the face is Roman Reigns, but I think it's the first time that they've had a face of the company, which is actually a bad guy, you know, as a heel, you know, for many years. But I think it's the same argument with Cena. You know, for years it was like, do we turn him? Do we not? I think they've done the right thing with Reigns. But that's what I find this sort of triple threat match at Mania so exciting, because you've got three guys who have had the same, in a way, the same sort of career path. You know, they've all headlined Mania. You know, two of the guys have got the same finisher, for Christ's sake. You got all three of them that had to go away from in-ring competition for their own reasons.
Yeah.
And every one of them that have come back have turned heel. You know, I always thought when Roman Reigns came back from his battle of leukemia, I thought, how can you turn the guy heel now? I mean, no one's going to boo this guy now. They did. You know, how are you going to boo Daniel Bryan? You know, he had to retire because of concussions. It's like, no one's going to boo this guy now. They did. Yeah. Now Edge, you know, I would have loved for Edge to sort of have the face run going into Mania, winning the belt in front of people. I would have loved that, but obviously, different direction, different paths, and that's where we are. But to answer your question, I think, was I ever a Roman Reigns fan? I think I probably was when he was in the Shield. When he went away from the Shield, I don't think I was, and that was no fault of his own. He was just sort of being, I think, pushed down people's throats a bit too much. And now that he's heel, obviously I'm not meant to like him, and I don't like him, so I suppose he's doing his job. But I think it goes back to what you say, and I've always said it. It's easier to play a bad guy because you know, if they love you, it's like, well, okay, it's not my job for them to love me, but great, you know, who's going to argue with people loving you? And you can always swing it, yeah, but they hate me really, and they love to hate me, you know. As if you are meant to be a good guy and you're getting booed, there's no like, someone will go, well, why are they booing you? You're meant to be they're meant to be cheering. You can't say, well, they're booing me because they love me. It doesn't sort of make any sense. I think the only situation that ever worked for was probably Kurt Angle. You know, after years and years of getting the "you suck" chants, I think a lot of people done it near the end because of respect and love.
Habit.
Yeah, so I think they've got a big problem. I think of sort of building stars now. And again, I think it's more, I suppose, than just a Roman Reigns problem. I think if it wasn't Roman Reigns, you know, it's happened to Seth. You know, when Seth beat Brock, it happened to him. Drew McIntyre, I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, it probably would have happened to him. You know, so yeah, I think there's just a bigger issue. But I think it's done Roman good, aligning himself with Paul Heyman, having that fresh attitude. You know, and I suppose we'll see more of that when the people come back into the arenas and see him in person.
Absolutely, some great points you made there. I never really thought about it like that with the triple threat either. That they're so similar that they have all had to go away for some, you know, outside the ring issues, and they thought that was the end of their career. It certainly put it on hold for a long time. So they do share all that. I mean, in fact, I think they should make more of a point of saying it. You know, in their storyline, I think it would add a little bit more dynamic to it, to what was already going on. So you make a good point there. It's always one of those things. Being a WWE fan, Max, is like, if you watch it long term like us, sometimes you're not very rewarded because you got to kind of forget things a lot of the times. But I love those long arc kind of stories, and whenever they do it, it always plays into what I enjoy the most. That's why I kind of enjoyed, although it wasn't a match, the reward last year for watching Bray Wyatt and John Cena was epic because they touched on so many points. It was almost like going through Cena's whole career, and you know, the what if scenarios, and what if he did turn heel as NWO, and those kind of things were all suggested. And that's where it pays off being a long-term fan. But a lot of the times you have to sort of forget almost the last month, as you rightly said at the top of the show, with the Hurt Business just splitting up. I guarantee you 20 years from now, when they watch the promo back for this event, they probably wouldn't even know the Hurt Business was together. because
No.
they'll just blank that out. I was very surprised with the timing of that one, just because it was like 2 weeks before. Normally, that kind of thing would happen on the Raw after or something, or at least a month in advance at a pay-per-view. But that was a little bit of a shame for those guys involved. Now, as fans, Max, like you mentioned, you'd gone to a WrestleMania as well before. But when did you first watch your first ever sort of live WrestleMania from obviously at home on a TV screen? What can you remember the WrestleMania and what kind of got you sort of amped up to watch it?
So I do. I can answer two of that point. I
Go on,
remember
mate.
the first time I watched wrestling, and it's the most obscure match ever. It's not like your Bret Hart versus your Bret Hart versus Shawn. It's not your Y2J versus Shawn or Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes. It was literally Triple H versus JR on a Raw. And I always remember my dad was watching it, and I couldn't sleep that night. And I came downstairs and I said, "Dad, I can't sleep." And he was like, "All right, sit with me for a little while." And I did. And he had wrestling on, and he said, "You shouldn't be watching this, really." And I mean, that match, as you can imagine, back then
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Crimson Mask sort of thing. And I loved it. Batista came out, he assisted JR in the win, and I was hooked. But always knew, obviously, that wrestling is scripted and it's theatre, and it is athletic, and not to take anything away from them. I hate when people say it's fake, because I just think, well, actually, you don't say, your theatre shows are fake. You know what they are. It's only fake if you imply it's real. And yes, they did that years and years ago. But now they are very open to say, no, we're a show. We put smiles on people's faces. And I think that's the main difference there. But my first Mania that I can remember watching, my dad actually paying for it on Sky Box Office, was WrestleMania 23. And it was Undertaker versus Batista, Cena versus Shawn. And to be honest, it might just be because it was my first Mania, but for me, it was one of the best. It was sort of, I always used to obviously follow wrestling until that point, and was always look for the results of, did Undertaker retain the streak? Because obviously the year prior it would have been Mark Henry, and the year prior would have been Orton, and then Kane. So always kept up with that, but never watched a full Mania until 23. And for me, I think it's just one of the best Manias for me. I mean, I remember feeling sorry for Vince McMahon, believe it or not, when he lost against Trump in the hair versus hair match. I remember, thinking Undertaker's streak was over after that Batista bomb, and thinking, yeah, the streak's dead. And I remember, wanting Shawn Michaels to win desperately for the main event and getting the championship. But for me, even the build-ups to that Mania, the Royal Rumble with Taker eliminating Shawn, all the way to No Way Out with the Batista and Undertaker versus Cena and HBK, and on their road to Mania going in as world tag team champions as well. The build-up for me was incredible. So yeah, that was really really good Mania for me. That I remember watching as a kid, and just that for me really got me sort of hooked. It was like, wow. And just saying that card now makes it feel so like odd, because we would, I think, us fans would die for like a Undertaker versus Batista match or things like that, and just to think that they were main card roster at the time. You look at 23 to sort of 33, and the main roster sort of difference, and the stars they had at that 10 years ago and 10 years later. It's unthinkable, really. And I just wish they could sort of build those stars again to that level. But yeah, that was the first Mania for me.
Cool. Yeah, I actually remember that one quite well because I used to have a buddy at the time who was a fan, just like me. He grew out of wrestling a bit, I suppose. After we always used to watch WrestleMania together, he probably stopped watching around, I want to say 26, something like that. He was a
Okay.
massive Shawn Michaels fan, so I think that's secretly why he went off.
Yeah.
Because after that he wasn't in it. But yeah, is that the one where there was the ECW, the New Blood, and they were against the Originals? Was that on the same card? I vaguely remember a lot of those matches, and Carly and Kane as well, two inductees this year.
Yeah.
Trying to, because a lot about that WrestleMania, from what I remember, it was back in Detroit, and it was about, I think the theme was all grown up, and it was like 20 years since WrestleMania 3, so they tried to recreate that Andre Hogan, especially like the body slam with Kane and Carly, from what I can remember. So
Yeah.
does stand out as one of the best. And as you rightly say, like I've got to say, my first. It's funny you say you came down, you couldn't sleep, because that's kind of what happened to me when I was first exposed to wrestling. I think I was unwell or something along those lines. I came downstairs and there happened to be a Royal Rumble on the TV, and the first team that I saw come out, there was like a tag match, was the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom, and mate, I was
Are you
hooked.
sure it wasn't JR and the Road Warriors?
Yeah, it was him dressed up.
Yeah.
It was definitely the Road Warriors. It definitely with the spikes and the music, and I was so over the top back then. And I suppose you're right. Wrestling has changed, even from, like, obviously I'm a lot older than you, so I'm like from a completely different era. But I mean, from my time, I'm telling you, when I was small, the toys and stuff like that were everywhere. It was WCW, WWF toys just stacked. I know we still get that today, but it is still very limited. Like, I'm talking about a time where there were aisles of this stuff all over the place. And those characters back then were just so larger than life. And I think you're right as well when you say about just guys that are over. We don't have enough of them. Like, I'm talking about really, you know, over the top superstar level, even to people that don't know wrestling, know certain characters. I think the last person we've really seen kind of have that crossover is probably John Cena.
Yeah.
But that's one guy. I mean, he's carried that for ages, up until this point. And to really think about it, we haven't really had that much else. We've had little moments. I'd say we've had like a CM Punk moment for a little while, but nothing on the levels of what it used to be, and that many at the same time, which is kind of quite telling, really, I think, in the grand scheme of things. Do you have, after, of course, you watching that WrestleMania, and like you, yeah, I used to get it on the old Sky box office, cost you whatever a year, and I mean, back then it was like pay-per-views.
15
But yeah,
quid.
you had like the pre-show stuff, but it's nothing like it is now. I mean, a pre-show back then, for people that are not familiar with, 10, 20 years ago, I mean, it was a lot different. We're talking about like a kickoff show that would maybe just be a half an hour kind of thing, and that was a lot back then. And WrestleMania, I mean, for the most part, was at best 4 hours. They
Mm.
certainly weren't 6, 7, 8 hours that we get now, and not even 2 nights and all the rest of it. So it was a lot different, and I don't know if I enjoy it more like that or not, but I always think quality over quantity at the end of the day. But you mentioned earlier, Max, that you'd gone to WrestleMania. Is that the WrestleMania that you've been to only, or have you been to others as well? Or is that the 35 the one?
No, 35 was the one, and it all
Yeah,
came about. I basically had a friend that I grew up with since primary school, and we loved wrestling, and
nice.
sort of over the years lost contact, and then I started
Right.
going to the gym, and he worked there, and after my gym sessions, I would go down and sit near the door where he, because obviously he was still working, and I would just chat to him about wrestling
Hmm.
and everything. And he sort of said, we said it for years, but he sort of said, we should go Mania. And I was like, yay, of course, yeah. The next night, we got wrestling travel on the phone.
Yep.
You know, we're booking the trip, and yeah, I couldn't wait for the build up. And I think what makes that trip and that Mania so special for me was obviously I went to one live show in 2006 in Birmingham, and it was just like a house show,
Right.
and I saw all of the Raw roster. So I saw, you know, Triple H, Shawn, John Cena, Umaga, Edge, Randy Orton, Ric Flair, all of the Raw sort of superstars,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't get to see the SmackDown ones. So over the years, Shawn Michaels was my favourite wrestler, and I
Mm-hmm.
would say since he retired, um, I have now more shifted towards the Undertaker. I think he is the all-time best. You know, I'd
Mm-hmm.
say Shawn Michaels in ring wise was probably better than I think anyone I ever saw. But Taker, the character, how he is in person, was the all-time great for me. So my dream was to see Taker. When he retired at 33, I was devastated, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
gutted, because I thought it's the one guy I never got to see. And then when he came back at 34 in the squash match against Cena, I was like, right, this is my chance now, you know, to go see the Undertaker. And there's only going to be one place that he turns up, which is Mania.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the trip, and the time came closer to Mania, got time closer, and obviously he wasn't getting booked on the card. I'm like, you're joking. You know, this cannot be like the first time in years he doesn't turn up. Anyway, he didn't turn up. And that night I was gutted. I mean, don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
the show was brilliant. 35 was brilliant. You know, I was there for the Kofi Kingston win, you know, for the first
Yeah.
women's main event at Mania. I
Mm-hmm.
managed to get Wrestling Travels t-shirt on the Hall of Fame ceremony and on the
Nice.
WrestleMania TV. So, yeah, but I was really gutted. And obviously, I don't know if you heard, but the Troubles getting back that night because of
Yeah.
New Jersey's transport. We were out in the rain for like 4 hours, 80,000
Mm-hmm.
people outside, couldn't get home. We ended
Yeah.
up paying for an Uber, and there were 7 of us, and it cost us $50 each
Sheesh.
for the Uber. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we got back, and then obviously Raw the next night. I saw someone come out with a smoke machine, and I kept saying to my mate all night, it's like, oh, take it. And my mate was like, Max, don't get your hopes up. This smoke machine starts going, and you know, it was what's his name? It's absolutely gone. I am
Elias.
Elias.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Elias. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why the name just went. Elias was in the ring, and he said the next person to interrupt me is a dead man, and like the whole crowd just went nuts. And yeah, and obviously after that, Wrestling Travel invited me up to Liverpool to do some filming and to capture for the Love of Wrestling event, where I actually got to meet the Undertaker.
Wow.
And I hugged him, and there was a guard that was in between us, and the guard sort of came in and was like, no, you can't hug him, but Taker gave me a hug anyway. And it was like one of the best moments. But
Mm-hmm.
really, just really quickly though, getting back to that, what made that trip so worthwhile for me is because of that trip, I got to see a lot of the SmackDown superstars I didn't see. You know, your Rey
Mm-hmm.
Mysterios, your Kurt Angles, your Batistas, and
Mm-hmm.
what made it worth more for me was it was Triple H versus Batista,
Yeah.
and obviously that was the first initial rivalry that got me into
Mm-hmm.
wrestling.
Yeah.
So for me, it was an all-fitting round trip. I mean, you know, you didn't have JR on commentary, but you know, it was that was the rivalry that got me
Mm-hmm.
into it, and I, you know, in the end, I couldn't think of a
Mm-hmm.
better time. And obviously, 1 year before pandemic,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would, you know, and then take a retiring for the second time. I don't think I would have ever have got to see him or meet him. So
No.
I'm always thankful for my mate saying to me, Max, let's go this year for Wrestling Travel, and yeah, just the people that made that trip all it was.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, fantastic that you got to do it, because you're quite right. I mean, I don't know that would ever happen now, given 2 years at least without many fans, especially international at least. And Undertaker very much coming out of character now, doing a lot more stuff on just himself, kind of coming out and talking about he's never done that before. So you kind of know that's him kind of pushing himself away, which is a good thing, I think, as well, for him to finally find some closure to it and to be able to go out and just talk. Must be quite a nice thing as well. But yeah, you mentioned wrestling travel. You've done me a favor there, Max, because I'm just about to play a nice little ad for them. So you've done very well. You've got us into that. So I'm going to play a little plug for them. Thank you very much there, Max. And that wasn't done on purpose, people.
It weren't.
It's all very natural there. So yeah, here we go.
Please check out Wrestling Travel. They're a great sponsor for us. They help us with so many different events, so many different traveling inquiries. They are the greatest. They've been seen at Starrcade, Warrior Wrestling, you name it. Wrestling Travel is one of the premier traveling organizations for pro athletes such as ourselves.
There we go. The name and face, Max Green of Wrestling Travel. Now he's become the poster boy for them. But no, a great experience. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Just gives me time in the middle of this just to let everybody know what is coming up on Powered4.TV, the WrestleMania week, the week where it's just anything and everything at the moment for us over here now. Oh, mate, it certainly is. It's gone off a lot here, and I'm trying to make sure I've got everything in hand. So tomorrow night, which will be Friday, Big Fight Weekly Special. The boys from MMA and boxing are doing a special wrestling crossover with MMA. So there's certainly been a lot of stars that have crossed over, the likes of Ken Shamrock, Ronda Rousey, and even our guys have gone over there. CM Punk being one of them. I'm sure that'll go down very well. But Wrestling Travel's own Justin Clapper joins us on that with Stu Palmer and Chris. So go and check that out when we got that. And also that will lead us nicely into, we've got a special show coming on Sunday, which is going to be, we've titled Hair of the Dog. Mike Angus, he's joining us. We're going to be doing a little review of the first night.
Love it.
Looks like him there as well, doesn't it?
It's a good photo, actually. It's quite resemblance. Good old Mike.
I thought that. Very good portrait there of him. But the big one I want to encourage people to check out, Powered4.TV, is going to be on Saturday. 8 matches available on Facebook and YouTube. So it's going to be Powered4 Showcase featuring the likes of TNT, Extreme Wrestling, Pro Wrestling All-Stars from Belgium, Chicago Land Championship Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Clash, and the archive of 1PW. We're going to be showing 8 matches between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. On the hour. So literally from 2 p.m. GMT time. Go and check us out on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll be dropping a match on the hour. So go and check that out. All that and more, lots more this week. Max, want to just get back to, of course, the theme of WrestleMania and all the likes. Just you talking about live events, and obviously I've experienced the live stuff as well, been there and everything else. And it's one of those things because we get so much TV. That a lot of people say to me when they go to a live show, the one thing they always feel is empty is the fact that we don't hear the commentary team. And it always throws people out that first couple of times they go, because it is like you're there. The energy is certainly there from the crowd. But sometimes there's those moments where you're like, I need to know what's going on. You're so used to hearing. Has that ever affected you, or is that just something that's very niche to some people?
That's a really good question, actually. Thinking about it when I went, I think you're like something sort of missing. But I mean, I remember watching the Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole match at Takeover, and that was the week that we were there, and it was just so good. The energy, it was my first time actually watching an NXT match,
right,
as well. So. For me not to know the story and just see the athleticism that these guys were putting on, what a show they were putting on, was incredible. But also the amount of people around me, like my mate called his own spot, like the sort of Adam Cole, he's done this move and he's tried to put him through the table, and he was like, my mate is just like the highest pitch I've ever heard. He's like, it didn't break, it didn't break. And it was just one of the, like, to this day, it's still one of the best calls I've heard, and it's not even a professional commentator.
Yeah.
But you also had the NXT announcer, I always say his name wrong.
Ranello, yeah.
Yeah, and you could, even though I couldn't hear him, you could see him jumping up, and
he's very animated. Yeah,
yeah, and I think that added to it, because you can only imagine what he's saying anyway. And sometimes the commentary can actually, I find, depending on who is commentating the match, sometimes it can make it a bit. Oh, I would, I never like put commentators down, because obviously I think it's such a hard job. But sometimes some of their calls can fall a bit flat anyway. So if you've not got that, always remember Renee Young when the Undertaker came back, when Shane was on the top rope, and she tried to call something that was really good, but it just, for me, it fell really flat, and she just sort of said the deadly strikes of the Phenom, and it was a bit like it just wasn't. But some people can do it really good. I mean, for me, it didn't affect me. I mean, I think the only match it probably did was the main event for 35 with the triple threat, Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, and Charlotte Flair, just because I think everyone was so exhausted. It's getting back to what you're saying about how long Mania is now. Everyone's so exhausted. So if you've not got that sort of energy from the crowd,
I was going to say, how long was you in there for? Do you think, from start to finish, getting inside? If you had to guess,
7 hours, I'd say 7 hours. Yeah, I have to say 7 hours. I think, because maybe longer. I mean, the waiting as well. On top of that, I mean, the waiting on its own was 4 hours after the event. But in there, I mean, it was such a long event, but I loved it. And to be honest, sometimes there is an argument to say, well, if you're going to pay all that money, that's what I've always said about wrestling, is people have always go, well, why do you want to watch wrestling? Because it's all the results are predetermined. I go, yeah, but you could watch a Floyd Mayweather versus whoever match, and he could knock him out in 2 seconds.
Exactly.
And then you've paid 15 quid for 2 seconds. As Mania will build up all those matches, or wrestling will build up all those matches, the best that they can do, and majority of the matches, it's not going to be a quick squash match unless Goldberg's in it. And sometimes it works, like when he returned 2016, Goldberg and Brock, the whole fact that the match only lasted like 30 seconds was oh my God, and that sort of paid off.
No, I think you're right. And you know what, as wrestling fans, we can be spoilt a lot, because I was on a boxing podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about how expensive, this was a while ago, between Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather was $95 to just check out one fight, and the Mayweather Conor match, I think, was at $105, and it's like you're buying it for the one spectacle match. I get, if you're really into it, great, but those prices are so steep. Whereas us, we're lucky. We're not even having pay-per-views to buy. I mean, you can, but I'd advise anybody not to, and get yourself the WWE Network, or if you're in the States, get Peacock, because you're going to be charged, well under, and have everything else to go and watch as well. So, like, if you sign up for the first, you're going to have a free month of just watching the whole history of wrestling, if you want to sit there 24 hours a day. Whereas if you know, back when I used to buy pay-per-views, you used to get repeats for about a week and then it would go off. So that was the end of that. And then you'd have to go and buy the DVD that'd come with all the extras and all the rest of it. It was a different process back then, but more expensive. And I think fortunately for us, as it's gone on, it's actually become a lot easier for everybody to access and watch a show. And as you say, like, we might moan how much it goes on for, but at the end of the day, they always do give you your money's worth. Like, you can't say for what you put down, you're not going to get something back within the span of 7 hours. You know, there might be things that you don't agree with or everything else, but there's enough variety on it. Whereas things like boxing, you've got one fight to go on. Once it's over, it's over. Even if it does go to 12 rounds, it's a done thing. It's not like you can kind of keep it or own it or anything like that. So we're kind of lucky.
And
no, exactly. You haven't got that attachment.
It's not that long-term story like booking either. You know, it's not like you get Randy Orton and John Cena for one night. They might have a rematch, and if they do, then they might have one more. I mean, we've had, you know, some of these rivalries have played out for 10 years. You know, 15 years. I mean, you look at the Shawn Michaels Undertaker rivalry. I know it wasn't consistent from '97 all the way to 2010, but I mean, '97 you've got them fighting in the first sort of Hell in a Cell match,
great
all the
match.
way to, you know, him in the 10 years later in the Royal Rumble throwing him out, the No Way Out, No Way Out match. You know, then the next year, then both starting off in the Rumble in 08, 09, their WrestleMania match, 10, their WrestleMania match, 11, Shawn sort of getting involved in the Triple H match, 28, he's special guest referee. You know, so that's a good sort of time span of you know, you've paid, you paid that $100 or whatever for Bad Blood in '97. But God, over the last, you know, good 14 years, you can refer back to that and go, oh, I remember, you know, the first time those two sort of locked horns and went at it. As boxing, you're not going to see that, you know, Conor McGregor. Well, you might do maybe once or twice, but you're not going to get, you know, McGregor and Floyd Mayweather in 20 years sort of thing. So, Sorry,
no, you're right.
On a tangent
No, it makes perfect sense. It was difficult because the boxing people I was talking to were almost jealous of us having what we had with the WWE Network, because they said at the end of the day, true boxing fans, they're the ones that miss out because they have to pay these crazy prices, which are more set for casual fans that might not watch boxing until there's a really big fight with names involved. And that's why the prices go up so much. So if you're a real boxing fan, it kind of sucks because you don't get rewarded.
I'm surprised that they haven't sort of capitalised on that, you know, of doing a boxing network.
I think it's just because of all the promoters and different boxers promoting themselves. I think it's all about money at the end of the day for them. Whereas I think, fortunately for us, Vince is a one man machine, you know. So
he owns your name. He owns everything.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you mentioning that you know, talking about '97. What that tells me, Max, is that obviously when you did start watching wrestling, you obviously, like I and most other people, I guess, started to go back and watch older wrestling archives. Have you had the opportunity to familiarize yourself with most WrestleManias, or is there still that, you know, you haven't sort of sat through or know too much about, or have you kind of gone back in over the years and, you know, picked out a few that I don't know, might have been recommended to you or you'd seen in highlights?
So I could probably name you every Undertaker opponent. I could name you every WrestleMania main event.
Right, he knows.
He's
quizzed up there.
All the way to, you know, Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Perfect, Hogan and Piper from WrestleMania 1, all the way to the terrible main event I still can't believe was ever a main event of Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow. I love the Manias, and I think they are the Super Bowl of wrestling. and I think it's as you say, it's getting trickier. These main events now. I mean, some people look back at a main event and we still argue over that sort of main event context. It's like CM Punk always says, well, I never main event in WrestleMania, but I mean, is the main event the match that goes on last, or is it one of the main events? Because I would say going one-on-one against the Undertaker at WrestleMania, I mean, I would think, for me, I would say it's probably not respectful to turn around to the Undertaker and go, yeah, but that's not main event. Because I would actually say, well, no, anyone that faces the Undertaker at WrestleMania.
Mate, I think the streak was bigger than the titles at one stage. I wanted to see that match over the world titles or WWE at one time. So
yeah,
there was definitely a draw.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a good, again, long-term story. I mean, you think if you paid every Mania for the last 25 to, so yeah, 27 years, I mean, it's getting back to that sort of boxing thought again. You've had 27 years worth of Undertaker, or 21 years worth of the streak. And yeah, but yeah, I love the Manias. I think over the years as well, I've been a little bit more disappointed with some of like the sets and things like that they've done. I mean, 35 I thought was brilliant, but the set I think could have, I was used to the sort of, again, I think wrestling fans can be the most critical, and that's myself included. We pick at anything. We pick at overalls in video games. We argue about who should be on the cover. We argue about, oh, that set doesn't look right, or oh, why did they split up the Hurt business? Or we will always be critical of the product. Of course. But that's what makes it better. But Mania, for me, it's that Super Bowl effect. It's the stage. It's the stories. It's larger than life. And yeah, I've gone back into wrestling because I think there's an element of wrestling that was definitely. I think Undertaker tried to say it on the Joe Rogan podcast and probably didn't say the best words. And I don't think he meant it to come across like that. I think the product was a bit more edgier and sort of different times, but also better in the sort of 90s, 2000 sort of times before I think the PG era sort of hit. But then I think we got to remember there's reasons why that era was ushered in, and there's reasons why these things had to happen. Just because the product wasn't better, just because the product was better doesn't mean that the environment was and everything around it. So sometimes you have to sacrifice some things for actually the well-being of others. Otherwise,
absolutely.
You look at things like Mick Foley did. You think, wow, absolutely brilliant, and oh my god, I can't believe he'd done that. But bless the guy. He's probably thinking back. Wish I hadn't sort of. I'm sure he'd say he wouldn't do anything different because that's a true wrestling sort of. That's a true wrestling professional, But there's probably some days that his doctor probably looks at him and goes, "Yeah, but you can't really walk, Mick." So,
no, I'm with you. Fascinating you talking about the sets. You're absolutely right. I think as big as it's gotten with all the stadiums and everything else, it's when there's so I don't know, from say I would say WrestleMania, I want to say 20, maybe around 25, 26. If there's a match now from WrestleMania on the screen, I couldn't tell you which one it was from. With the whole stadium things, I just wouldn't be able to tell you the difference until I see maybe a few things with the entrance or turning the camera slightly or whatever. But back in the day, those sets, those venues were very iconic. They all had an identity. You look at WrestleMania 9, stands out to most people fondly because it was outside. Caesar's Palace had this ridiculous concept of, all up on Romans and goodness knows what else. WrestleMania 3, obviously iconically remembered because, it was a huge indoor arena, absolutely magnificently looking from a distance. Had some great camera spots in that one.
Yeah.
And obviously all the Madison Square Garden, they're always unique because you get to see the entrance on the hard cam, stuff like that you don't normally see. So I think you're right. And also to your other point, mate, about, main events and what is a main event. I don't think that it's like it used to be, where you used to have to build the whole show around two guys. I think that's changed now. I think that, like you just said with Wrestling Travel, we book this thing up a year in advance. We don't even know what we're going to get. I mean, half the time we just show up because it's WrestleMania. So the name value has become bigger than the actual who's on it now. So it's got a real pull. Let me ask you, while we wrap this one up, Max, for this year's WrestleMania, are there any matches in particular that you think are going to be dark horses towards like a good match for the night, or matches that we might not suspect will be that good? Because obviously we've got 2 nights worth of wrestling here. Quite a lot of matches. Some matches I'm, hit and miss with. Other matches I'm looking forward to. What about for you? Is there any ones that you're looking at, especially in that sort of undercard, that you think will grab the attention?
Well, obviously, I think that the triple threat match will be brilliant. I've always been a sort of fan of the triple threat matches anyway.
Right.
Bad Bunny, I don't think is overly going to be brilliant. It'd be interesting to see the AJ Styles, the New Day, and Omos. That'd be interesting to see. I think the Cesaro versus Seth Rollins match would be really good. I'm expecting a big bump from Shane, and I think that will probably pay off very well.
Steel cage.
Yeah, I mean, Vince loves his son, but gosh, he puts him through the matches, doesn't he? It's like, what can you jump off this year, son? Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair is going to be a brilliant match. I'm just trying to think. I don't.
Well, we got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn now, with the influencer Logan Paul being involved in that one as well. So, I mean, it's one of those matches that I love Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn singly, and I know that this will be a dream come true for them to work together. But I just got a feeling it has to get the time. They have to be able to tell the story right. If they don't get the time, it might not come off as people kind of think it will.
And I think the thing that's ruined it for me with that match is the Logan Paul aspect. I don't know why he's there. I'm not being horrible there, but I just it's, for me, it's a bit like the sort of let's look at the Bad Bunny match, for instance. You're speaking now about a 2-time former WWE champion. Second time granted transitional champion, first time granted, you might be able to argue right place, right time, maybe a bit of a transitional champion as well. But I personally think The Miz has probably done his best work over the last few years, and now he's facing Bad Bunny at WrestleMania. It's like, he was WWE champion a few months ago, or a few weeks ago. It's like, come on. And the whole Logan Paul aspect, I don't know. This seems to be a thing with YouTubers now, transferring from YouTube into television. We've seen so many people make that transition. For years, they slated television and said YouTube was going to be the next sort of thing, and now they're all sort of going over to television. But I just don't know what Logan Paul sort of adds to it, apart from that sort of celebrity sort of caliber. And again, I think those two can put on a really good match, and I don't think it needs Logan Paul there. I think The Miz doesn't need to face Bad Bunny. I mean, the other matches, I think we got Riddle and Sheamus. That'd be interesting. I think they're put on a good match. Owens and Zayn, Big E and Apollo Crews. I think it'd be a good match, but I think at the same time, is it one of those matches I'm sort of looking forward to and can't wait to watch? I think the thing is with mid-card championships now is and I don't mean this horribly, they don't mean as much as I think what they used to.
No.
You know, there's sort of no build up, even for Riddle and Sheamus. It's not so much about
Mhm.
the championship; it's more about them. You know,
Mhm.
for instance, you know, if you used to say to me off the cuff, you know, who those champions are, back in the day, I'd be able to go, oh, you know,
Yeah.
Intercontinental Champions Jeff Hardy. I wouldn't have to think about it as much as now. I have to
Mhm.
go, oh, who is holding that belt, or who is the tag
Yeah.
team champions, or
Mhm.
so I think they need to sort of amp the matches for mid card championships
Mhm.
up a bit more.
Mhm.
Obviously, the Fiend and Orton will be interesting to see. I think it'll probably be I think that will, as you say, be changed to sort of a funhouse match in the next sort of couple of weeks. Oscar and Ripley, I think, will be really good. Triple threat match is going to be really good. Cesaro and Seth Rollins, I would say, is one to sort of watch out for. I think they can really put on a good match. Strowman and Shane, if you want to see Shane get thrown off something, you know, that's what you want to watch. You watch Braun will fall off something now, and we're all like
Yeah,
idiots.
probably.
But apart from that, yeah, I think the two matches that I think are probably like not being thought about as much as the main two matches is probably the Seth Rollins and Cesaro match and Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, which is ironic actually. Obviously, she
Mhm.
won the Rumble, and you'd think they'd be at the forefront. But I think Oscar and sort of Ripley has came in and sort of took the light off a bit.
Mhm.
So I think those are the two matches. I think the triple threat match is going to be amazing, especially now it's got Bryan in there. I mean, you know, at least you've got one more finisher in there that's not the same.
Mhm.
Spear
Mhm.
versus Spear has turned into Spear versus knee. So
Mhm.
um, it'll be interesting. And obviously, it'd be the first WrestleMania that Cena hasn't had any involvement in for some years as well.
Yeah, you know, I was just looking at the card, and for anybody that's watching now, this is pre-recorded, so if there is anything being added, there might well be. So, but just so you know, but in any case, from what I'm looking at, I was just thinking about it, Max. Is that like obviously there's no Undertaker advertised, there's no John Cena, no Brock Lesnar, who's for I know people blow hot and cold with him, but he's been a big draw for the last 4 or 5 years, especially when it comes to WrestleMania. There's always
Yeah,
something that he's involved with. So there's, I think, star power. This is almost like very internal. This is
mm.
as internal as it's going to get without kind of going from the outside. Like I was even wondering, man, is Triple H going to do one of these returns like he always seems to do? But even he's stayed off, which is quite surprising, really. So, it's a lot about what can this current roster do and live up to, because they are almost by themselves. And to your point about the whole celebrity involvement, I kind of miss the days when celebrities just used to turn up and do something backstage or just do something they're good at, rather than actually being involved in a match. Like, I don't know where
Yeah.
it's got to that point now, but like that's the new trend now, is to come in and actually work a match. I don't mind it so much if they're an athlete or something like that, that maybe there's a bit of pull. But when I see celebrities, I kind of think it just hurts a lot of the current stuff that we've seen throughout the whole year. When you start seeing guys come
Yeah,
in and get better shots in than half the roster do.
and that's it. There used to be sort of a build up for it. You know, you look at like
Hmm.
the Mike Tyson, you know,
Yep.
Vince, you know, and then Austin
And
just
even
came out.
Lawrence Taylor had a bloody build up.
Yeah, you know, and I'd say even, and I hate to say it, even Bad Bunny has had some sort of build up, but
Mhm.
Logan Paul's just like, right, I'm here.
Chuck him in.
It's like,
See what he
great,
can
you're
do.
here, but why
Yeah.
are you here? Even Arnie, when he came in and he done the backhand to Triple
Yeah,
H,
yeah, I
you know,
remember that. That was classic.
but I think they're obviously, yeah, there's been, but I mean, you look at the caliber of them. I mean, as well. I mean, you've gone from Mike Tyson to your Muhammad Ali at WrestleMania, special guest referee. You know, your Cyndi Lauper's, and now it's like Bad Bunny or Logan Paul. It's like you've had the baddest man on the planet, and now you've gone all the way to Bad Bunny.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, but at the end of the day, if they're wrestling fans and they love the product and they want to be involved in it, then I suppose at the same time, you know, kudos to them. You know, if I was in their situation, and you know, I had the opportunity to manage someone at Mania or be involved in any capacity, I suppose I would. So I don't want to be a hypocrite and criticize it, because
we jump on it.
we would jump on it, and
Yeah.
that's obviously the case for them. I just think it becomes a little bit dangerous and I want to say unbelievable, because for Christ's sake, we've had Mae Young give birth to a human hand. But it becomes a bit dangerous and a bit sort of unbelievable when they start of getting involved, as you say, in matches for no good reason. You know, as Tyson, I mean, it would have been great to have a Tyson Austin feud, you know, match, but it was enough to have him as the guest referee. It was the enforcer. It was great. It had reasons. It built to something for the superstars. You know, it built something for Austin. It built something for those people. As I don't think this is actually doing anything for the Miz. It's not doing anything for the Kevin Owens and Zayn match. If anything, it's heightening the celebrities' popularity and not doing anything for the wrestlers. And you know, we know, for instance, Tyson, the enforcer, lifting Steve Austin's hand, that done more for Austin than it did for Tyson. So I think, again, it needs to be used sort of wisely. But there's going to be times where it does benefit the celebrity, just like Arnie whacking, you know, Triple. So
Yeah,
it swings and roundabouts. But
yeah, sometimes less is more from those that come in from the outside. Certainly, they've had lots of people do it, but I've just never known of a time where they've always had to get in the ring and do stuff and with the wrestlers. But there you go.
You had the Green Arrow a few years ago as well, didn't you?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
What about that, Cody?
Yeah. So yeah, I can understand why they want to, but it's I think using them wisely, and I think in the middle of a pandemic as well, it's still something that you sort of got to be sensible about. Of who do we really need them? Do we not? Yeah, I mean, you look back at Tyson, Arnie. I mean, they needed them. You know, they're in the middle of a Monday Night War. You know, they needed the ratings. They needed that sort of star power. Now, do they need Logan Paul? Is he going to add anything? Is Bad Bunny adding anything? Is anyone actually tuning into Mania to watch the Bad Bunny match? And if they're not, then do we need it? If you had Tyson versus Austin, people would have paid for that. So it's adding that sort of that thought process around it. But I'm rambling on about celebrities and their involvement. So
no, you're good, man. I think it's an interesting conversation that could go on forever, because of the amount of input and what they actually do and what the actual requirement is, and goodness knows what else. I mean, for one reason, I think one of the big reasons to getting any celebrity involved, especially around WrestleMania, is the fact they used to do a lot of talk shows. So you'd see the celebrity go on there and start talking about WrestleMania, which would get different audience watching wrestling. Or if it was like Brock Lesnar, when he used to come back, although people used to get annoyed, ESPN Sport used to pick up on a lot of his stuff, which they never really covered wrestling all that much. Same as Ronda Rousey. But again, they are athletes, so there is a bit more of a pull. Like a Tyson Fury, if they kind of got him, I would understand that perfectly, because of he's very much in the news. He's in the spotlight currently. But a YouTube sensation. Okay, you're going to get his followers, but I mean, is it going to make a huge dent? I'm not too sure. You know, across the whole world, I don't know what his pull is. I think it's more, you know, if you're into social media, that's fantastic. But for everybody else, it's kind of, it's very niche as well.
And you know what? It might. You know, I might
Yeah.
be proved wrong. You know, I mean,
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
you've got to remember, I was a young kid that just got up one night and his dad was watching wrestling, and that was enough to get me hooked. So, if you're a social media follower of Logan Paul and you've never watched wrestling, and you tune in and you watch that one fight and you think, actually, I'm going to stay tuned in for the rest of the show, and then you see the real sort of the superstars, you know, in those matches. Yeah, if you've got the Logan Paul match and you go into that triple threat match, my God, you know, I think you're probably going to fall in love with wrestling. So
Yeah.
maybe it will work. You know, maybe
Yeah.
it's just you know, a bit. Again, maybe they could tell the story a bit better and get them involved in a better way. Maybe that's more of the critique. Not so much they're involved, but maybe the story and the purpose of why they're involved could be done better. But maybe it will work. You know, maybe I'll come on here in a month's time and go, yeah, how wrong was I?
He's become a Logan Paul fan next time I
Yeah,
see you.
I'll have a hat on and everything.
Well, I want to thank you very much for you taking your time out on this busy week, Max, and chatting wrestling and mainly WrestleMania with us. It's been a fascinating chat. Obviously, we had you on before. We were talking about everything autism and all the other great work you do. So just let everybody know about the stuff you do, Max, and also some of the up and coming shows that we can see you on. I'm sure there's a few things coming up for you.
Yeah, so last week was obviously Autism Awareness Week. So I released a second series of the Autism Connections, where I interview people who have some sort of connection with autism, and that could be a teacher, that could be a parent, that could be an autistic individual, that could be even someone that's not got autism, you know, because I feel that we all sort of have that sort of connection and that link towards it one way or another. We may have heard of it, we might have a family member with it, so it's always important that we sort of keep on top of it. I'm also the end of the month, every Friday at the end of the month, I am doing a speech. So the next one will be, just tell you to make sure,
Sorry, mate.
April. So yeah, the next one will be on. So yeah, sorry. So I've got a speech at Oxford Brookes University that'll be online on the 19th, and then the one that people can actually go and watch is for the 30th of April. And it's on 7:30 till 8:30, and it's to do with autism in schools, colleges, and employment. And we'll just be covering basically what each sector could be doing well, which could be doing better, and what they need to sort of do to improve. And then after that, there's then one on the 28th of May, the 25th of May, the 1st of July, first of, sorry, I think I've got those dates wrong. Sorry, mate.
That's okay. We can add them in our as our part on description. So Max will send those to me for anybody that wants to go down and check them out when the dates will be. We can get them in official.
Yeah,
but
what I'll just say really quickly is, you know, I've got a lot of speeches coming up, and what I'll do is I'll send them to you to put in the description.
Fantastic. Yeah, obviously always busy, Max, but always great to hear from you as well, and all the great work that you do. It was a fascinating chat that we had. I would encourage anybody with the interest, or you know, even if you haven't got an interest, go and check it out, because it's about raising awareness for autism. Part of our chat leaned towards that on our first episode, so I want to encourage everybody to go and check that out, and also go and check Max's work out. Where can we find you, Max, on social media for anybody that wants to follow you and obviously find out where you are from that angle as well?
So Facebook is one area, so it's just at Maxi J Green. My Twitter is at Max J Green. You've got my YouTube, which is Maxi Aspie. But if you want to get all these sort of social media links in one place, just go to my website, and it's maxjgreen.com. If you go there, all the social media's at the top there. And on there, you'll find my news. You'll find where my speeches will be as well, and all the dates for them coming up, and also the series of the Autism Connections will be on the YouTube channel Max the Aspie, but also on the website.
Nice. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Max, and good luck with that. Obviously, I hope you enjoy WrestleMania as well. We will certainly get you back on the show, I'm sure, at some point in the next couple of months. And I'm sure we'll either be looking back with it and thinking, what were they doing? Or we'll be really happy nonetheless. Like all good wrestling fans, of course, critiquing everything. But thank you very much for taking time out, Max. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you again, buddy.
No, thank you. My prediction is Bad Bunny and Logan Paul will be joint WWE champions.
What a time that would be, eh? My goodness. And why not just make an undisputed belt between them? They can take turns like the New Day would with the tag titles. That would be the
do a
new
Michelle
thing.
McCool when they call kind of belt. They can
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, no, thank you very much. Don't forget, everybody, I want to encourage everybody, check out Powered4.TV this week. Loads of WrestleMania content coming your way. Don't forget Saturday Powered4 Showcase, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Facebook, YouTube. There'll be a match dropping on the hour from our wonderful platform of real variety of matches that will give you a nice bit of build up towards, as if you needed more, the biggest event of the year, WrestleMania. So, you know, look, if I was a young kid, maybe I'd be all for it. But I tell you, I don't think I've got the energy levels these days to keep up with it all. But I'm sure if I was younger, this would be like the dream. Do you know what I mean? Non-stop wrestling all over the show. So, yeah, check it out. Thank you again, Max. And we'll see you next time, buddy.
No, thank you for having me.
Cheers.